you were one of the UK's youngest radio presenters, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess I just sort of worked my way up from pressing the buttons to producing stuff. We had people like Deadmau5 come in a couple of times before anyone had really heard of those guys. Calvin Harris was a regular, so was David Guetta. He used to always drop by if he was in the north of England and do little sets because they weren't particularly big stars. They were just on the way up. And like I mentioned before, but all three of the Swedish House Mafia before they were kind of together and known as that. I was just very lucky because for 20 years we had most of the biggest names just coming in each week. But I found in my attic was a 2-hour DAT tape that was of the late Frankie Knuckles, like a full studio recorded set with loads of his tracks in there, probably like unreleased stuff and his own remixes and stuff.
Andy, thank you very much for joining us. We were just having a short chat then. I've got to ask the same about your background. Where did you start in music?
Well, I mean, I suppose going really far back, I've always obviously been madly into music. My dad was actually a DJ in the 70s. He had a big collection of vinyl records. There was always lots of music at home. So, talking 80s, so electronic pop stuff like the Pet Shop Boys, Erasure, Kraftwerk, all that kind of thing. Loads and loads of vinyl. So growing up then through the 90s, it was sort of a natural progression, this amazing time when rave and early dance music was starting to come onto the radio and stuff like that. So I've been into it since I was a kid, and like most people, just kind of religiously bought Mix Mag and DJ Mag and Music Magazine and was listening to it on the radio. And then kind of my life changed. I never thought I'd be able to get into it. I grew up in a very small northern nothing kind of town, and the idea of ever being part of that scene was just like, there's no chance. It's for people who are from London and grew up in the media and they're very rich and wealthy and they must be the most amazing and glamorous kind of place. But yeah, when I was like 15, 16 years old, this radio station called Kiss 105 started. It was, there's obviously Kiss in London and Kiss started in Yorkshire and Leeds. And I basically just fired them letters and letters and letters before they even started. I just heard the test transmissions on the radio, and it was like music from outer space. Like I'd never heard anything like it in my life. I was like, wow, this is coming to near where I live. So yeah, just firing off letters to them before anyone had an email address, and just saying, please, I'll come in and I'll work for free. I'll do anything that you want. And that's kind of, to cut a long story short, that's where I sort of started, was through the radio side of things, and then through that got into obviously playing out and being a DJ and touring and making music and building it from there. But yeah, I guess I started properly about 97.
So you sending letters to Kiss work.
Yeah.
My first girlfriend at university, Caroline, her best friend worked at Kiss,
Oh, really?
London.
Yeah.
And I bombarded them with tapes and CDs for years, and they ignored me forever. So I obviously wasn't quite good enough. But,
what I want to think it was because it was, I guess you've got a lot more people. It was already very established. Kiss 100 was, and this was a new station, and they probably just needed kids who were going to work for free for a while to do all the boring stuff. It was make tea, it was press the buttons, but I was more than happy to do that because it got me in there. And I was like, you were pressing buttons on down the line would be like Judge Jules and Carl Cox doing their show on Friday nights, and you'd be in the studio at the other end of it, kind of fading them up, and it was so exciting for when you were like 17 years old.
I was an utter pest. I remember Caroline used to say to me, "Stop giving me they've got enough of them." So moving on, you were one of the UK's youngest radio presenters, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess I just sort of worked my way up from pressing the buttons to producing stuff. Spent a lot of time. I basically used to work every Friday and Saturday night. So when I finished school, I went to do my A-levels, and I was doing college, Monday to Friday. And then a Friday afternoon, I'd get on the train straight over to the radio station and then basically just work until the morning doing the overnight stuff when no one else wanted to do it. And I did that Friday and Saturdays for a year or so. And then, of course, there's a lot of downtime when the studios are free. So I'd go in and just practice and, do shows to no one and give those to the bosses and say, get some feedback on it and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I did my first show New Year's Day 1998, so I was 16 years old. So I don't think any stations would allow that anymore. The world isn't like that anymore. But
that was
yeah,
my.
I was very lucky.
What was your memory like? Just doing that. Were you nervous going into that first show, or
Yeah,
what
I was. I mean, it was New Year's Day, so basically they were like, okay, no one wants to work on New Year's Day. All the DJs are going to be out doing gigs and stuff like that because they're all very, they were all kind of very cool, credible DJs who did lots of gigs. So no one wanted to be on at like 6 a.m. on New Year's Day because it's they'd all been out working the night before. So they were probably just like, just get the kid on it, just get Andy to come in and do it. And I did. And I was absolutely terrible, obviously. And I think my mum and dad had to come and pick me up because I didn't drive or anything. So,
oh my God! So
but it's such a buzz, which never goes away. It still feels the same now.
First time, yeah, because I speak to a lot of DJs. Obviously, we've been doing quite a lot of these podcasts over the last few weeks. I think we're on about 15, 16 now. And I speak to a lot of DJs. I go, when was your first gig? And they're like, and they can't remember. I'm like, how can you not remember your first gig?
Yeah, that is weird. Surely everyone can remember their first gig.
But most of them can remember their first gig in Ibiza,
right?
Which is strange.
Yeah.
Now you've hosted shows on Galaxy, Capital, Kiss, so many more. Which station was the one that you really felt most at home at?
Well, I started at Kiss as a teenager. I came back there about 10 years ago, and I've stayed there ever since. History is kind of my radio home nowadays. But I do feel very, very lucky to have been part of Galaxy. It was a really, really special station. We were never in London, so anyone who kind of grew up around London probably doesn't really know of it. But outside of that, so if you're in the North, Manchester, Yorkshire, in the North East, up in Newcastle, Birmingham, the South Coast, it was Bristol. Galaxy was it was a huge thing. It was our thing. It was our connection to like clubland, to the underground and the overground and the charts and everything else. It was an amazing thing to have been part of. So I feel very, very lucky to have been a little part of that. But the Capital was an amazing time as well. We launched all of the dance and specialist stations on there, and I had some great times there as well. But I would definitely say that Galaxy is like the thing that I'm most proud of being part of, but Kiss will always be my home, I think, because it's where I started and where I'm back.
And you're doing History, of course. Yes. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I managed Judge Jules's socials for years.
Okay.
So I remember when he first started doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've kind of lost track on what's going on in History at the moment. But
History, I know, it sort of came from just like a thing that happened in the day, wasn't it? It was like a mix that happened like middle of the morning. I think History did, and eventually it became so popular, it became its own station. And then I joined it probably going on 3 years ago when it was already kind of doing well. I mean, History's absolutely flying now. I mean, I don't know if it's just the times that we live in. It's the fact that people enjoy music from kind of, from a different era. Just a load of things coming together. But yeah, History is doing incredibly well. I mean, it's the biggest digital commercial station in the country. It's got 2.5 million listeners or whatever. So it does do. Yeah, it's a really nice place to be. Again, very lucky to be part of that, really.
I remember when Jules first announced that he was going to be doing that, and the buzz about it on his socials was immense. And I was just
for Jules, same, isn't it? Because he started at Kiss. Like I said, it was going back home for him as well.
Yeah, exactly. I remember we actually dug out some old photos. And I think we found 1 or 2 really old original photos. We'll go into nostalgia in a minute because,
I mean, Jules is he's got such an incredible history. I was probably about this time last year, all the presenters from all the different Kiss stations had to go down for like a kind of catch-up meeting, and I was sat sort of next to Jules. I was like, is this really weird for you that you're sat in this meeting now talking about the future of this? And I was like, you were literally sat in these meetings on day one when it was still a pirate. And he was like, yeah, but he takes it all in his stride. He's just like, yeah. I was like, it's amazing to me. But
he does take everything in his stride. I mean, I love him. It was great doing his socials because when we took it on, I could really dig back into the past. And we were testing what was working online. And I still remember the first few posts that we did, and it just shot off his socials. We hit the magic source straight away, you know. And he just started rocketing. And I really enjoyed that over a few years. Regarding being on air, anything weirdly go wrong on air? There must have been something.
I'm going to say not really, mainly because I'm like such a stickler for preparing. So I'm really anal about this stuff. I write myself scripts. I test every single mix out. I'm rubbish at just doing stuff like off the cuff. So, I time out when I can talk and all this kind of things. There's not much that can go wrong from my side. I suppose really just apart from when guests go wrong. We have had, I think, people like, I remember years ago, Sebastian Ingrosso came and did he was doing like a live set on the show on vinyl. And he put, this is at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon on national radio, and he started this track, and it was just the F word over and over and over repeated again, and the producers are going,
Oh my God.
I don't know how to stop it. I don't know what to do. I walk over, and it was, so you do get some of those, and then we've done lots of over the years, done all sorts of broadcasts from from Ibiza and from all the old festivals like Gatecrashers from a Sound System, Creamfields, Global Gathering, all those. There's lots of kind of wild and madness stuff, but I don't want to get anyone in trouble. So.
No. I was saying I've got a couple of stories about Sebastian, but I'm not going to go into those quite on here. So what's over the years you've supported a lot of artists from the beginning. Have you seen any really blow up and just start flying, and you're like, whoa, how has that happened?
Yeah, well, to be fair, myself and Nick Riley did a show on Galaxy for years called New Breed, and that ran through the sort of mid-2000s, and that was sort of to showcase new talent that was coming through, more on the underground side and the younger people. But people like Paul Woolford, Miguel Campbell, Tom Starr, a lot of those northern guys got some of their first ever kind of radio exposure through that show. And then in terms of big names, we had people like Deadmau5 come in a couple of times before anyone had really heard of those guys. Calvin Harris was a regular, so was David Guetta. He used to always drop by if he was in the north of England and do little sets, because they weren't particularly big stars. They were just on the way up. And like I mentioned before, but all three of the Swedish House Mafia before they were kind of together and known as that. I was just very lucky because for 20 years we had most of the biggest names just coming in each week to do mixes and to chat and stuff like that.
Yes, it's nice you mentioned Deadmau5 and Calvin Harris in their early years, because with 360, some of my business partners worked at 360 and still work at 360. Like Mark obviously is the boss, and we're doing God's Kitchen with him now in September, which is going to be amazing. We're kind of, we've got the lineup sorted, and it's very God's Kitchen.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I remember when we used to play at God's Kitchen quite regularly, and do remember him kind of saying it was like 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning or something, or Sunday morning, going, "Oh, I'm actually leaving. I've just found this guy on MySpace," and we were like, "Wow, you're leaving like a big organization like God's Kitchen to take a gamble on some random guy you found on MySpace."
Yeah,
but it worked out.
It worked out very, very well, and I've heard some of the original stories of getting Calvin and Deadmau5 from where they were and from nothing, and their fears and their anxiety of playing out in front of just a small club, and now look, they're pop stars,
Oh, totally, yeah,
absolute pop stars.
And we actually, we work with Deadmau5 now as he is for our company Distorted, so we look after Deadmau5 and all these kind of radio stuff and produces bits there. So again, it's one of those nice like full circle things.
Fantastic. And obviously streaming came along. Do you think radio still holds the same power these days?
Yeah, and if anything, I'm not going to describe it. It's like you almost need radio more now. What the problem? So streaming is amazing. And it, the fact that I can just pick up my phone and I can listen to any song pretty much ever made instantly that's like magic. For those of us who grew up with vinyl and cassettes and CDs,
Can you
like the
imagine
idea of you don't have to spend, you don't have to get the bus to HMV to a record shop and then
Saturday
buy
afternoons
it for like 10 quid, and then that there's something magical about that as well. Absolutely, of course there is. And nothing kind of beats when you go back to vinyl. It's like, oh, this is lovely. But so yeah, streaming absolutely magical, an amazing kind of thing. But there's too much music, nobody can deny. I think last count something like 100,000 tracks every single day are uploaded to Spotify. I know I read a thing the other day. I don't know if you saw it. That was that there's as many tracks released now every single day in 2025 as there was in the whole of 1989. So the entire music industry.
I've quoted that on a couple of other podcasts.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? So that kind of puts it in context, and then you realise that, okay, well, if there's so much music, how on earth are people supposed to find it? You know, you can't rely on algorithms to do stuff. So radio, in all of its different forms, so that might be like traditional linear FM or digital radio, but it also might be like through podcasting or Mixcloud or people who do shows for YouTube and Twitch and, you know, stream stuff like that. Radio in all of its forms is now more important and more popular than ever because people are very much like, you know, well, I like this thing. It might be that I like classic dance music, but it might be that I'm really into heavy rock or hip hop or, you know, so you go to the people you trust for that. And then you take that knowledge back to the streaming sites to make your own playlists, I think. So
I think if we were back in the 90s thinking that one day you'd be able to have a little device in your hand and then just press a couple of buttons and the song that you wanted would come up, or you could Shazam something.
Absolutely.
I mean, I used to take a bus, tube and 2 trains to get to my record shop in Watford. I was out in South London and I used to go to Watford for my records every Saturday. And it was just like nothing. It took me the whole day, you know, and I used to come back with 5 to 10 records that the guys at Strawberry Sundays at Sunny Side Up were playing.
I mean, without like going on too much of a tangent, that although yes, of course, that was a pain in the ass. Like that is what created a lot of different scenes, and you know, I don't want to go too far into it, but the kind of tribes that you had that we've lost quite recently is a real sort of detriment to the music industry and club scene and nightlife in general, because it used to be that you had to put so much, until very recently, you had to put so much into your kind of thing. So, you know, if you liked dance music, you'd buy the compilations or you might buy a couple of records that would cost you 10, 15 quid. It would be all your spending money as a kid would go on this one thing. And the clothes that matched that. And you had to sort of say, you put your flag in the sand and say, I'm part of this. You know, you had the emo kids who were all in black. You had the hip hop skater kids who had their certain way of dressing and their certain music. You had the ravers. And that actually was a really positive thing for like youth culture to be able to say, I am part of this, which is one of the problems with streaming is the fact that we've lost that because everyone, you know, and I've got kids myself, but no one has a sort of strong allegiance to one thing, one sound, one scene anymore, because you can get everything. So you're like, I like a bit of hip hop, I like a bit of dance, I like a bit of emo. I'll just put them all on a playlist together. But you don't have to kind of invest yourself so much into it, which, although, you know,
I get that.
You sort of lost a little something special with that.
I never really thought about it like that, but you're absolutely correct. Yeah. I mean, I remember I was really into hardcore at the time. Happy hardcore, I think it was called then.
Yeah, me too.
Rave, you know, rave music, it was called nowadays. And then there was the split into drum and bass. And then we were in our bedrooms with all the flyers. And we used to be sitting there having a smoke, you know.
Yeah.
And then when the split happened, there was like, what are you into?
Yeah.
And then it started to be, I'm more into the drum and bass. And Damien, my mate, used to start playing drum and bass on the 1210s. Yeah. And then it used to be hard house. But I rebelled. I found Strawberry Sunday, which was at the time proper pumping house.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. Damien said, well, man, you're into hard house, man. You know? And I was just like, it's not hard house, but we had separate verticals.
Totally. But the thing is, at the time, everyone would moan about that, like the how electronic music had become very fractionalized and become into these, you know, into these boxes, and you had to be into this or this. And at the time, we're like, oh, isn't that really terrible? That's awful. And now you go, that was great. Like, it was actually a really positive thing, because all it did was make each of those scenes like really rich and full of really passionate fans. And yeah, unfortunately, you kind of that's hard to do now for anyone who's kind of just getting into the scene.
This is what we were trying to do with One More Time, keep it the event, keep it very pure. And this is a lot of the reason why I'm doing the podcast. The podcast come about purely by, I run the social media for several different brands. And I've always found that the nostalgia always breaks through the ice and gets a lot more engagement. People are really involved with that. And that's how the Ibiza Worker Group happened. And the Ibiza Worker Group turned into One More Time Ibiza. Yeah. And we're always getting questions about DJs, events, and how you do this and how you do that. And I thought, well, I'm involved in the creative process. Let's put this little podcast together with everyone involved one more time this year. And we're lucky; we've already got an audience.
Yeah.
So we're not working. We're kind of not working backwards.
Yeah.
It's like usually you'd have to create an audience, whereas we've already got an audience.
Sure.
And they're really, really engaged. I mean, we've got over 100,000 followers across 2 pages on Facebook. We've got a really big Instagram page and all this. I like your TikTok page as well. I'm very jealous of it.
Thank you.
Yes, you seem to be flying on that at the moment. And
it's just sort of, again, just happens. I'm lucky with the whole Dance Music Archive project that it started as a hobby. It remains a passion project that we do purely for the kind of love of it, which I suppose gives it, ironically, gives it more of an authenticity than everything, than a lot of things that we've ever done before. Because you're not relying on it as like your thing. It's not a business. It's our passion, and it's something that we really love. So, and through that, it's kind of really grown. It's exploded into something.
Yeah, I mean, that you're with us on the 3rd of July.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Dance Music Archive,
Mm-hmm.
I've always said to myself that I have possibly one of the biggest music collections of, I think I've got hard drive after hard drive.
Yeah.
Old video footage, dance music, you name it. I've got so many gigabytes of it.
Need a bit of this.
Yeah, and I thought the only person who's possibly got anything bigger must be you. Now, how on earth did you put that website together, and how long did it take you?
I'll give you the story very quickly. The story of Dance Music Archive is that in the COVID lockdowns, 2020, spending a lot more time at home away from the office, and inevitably my wife was like, "Why is our attic and spare room just full of boxes of stuff? Old flyers, DAT tapes, vinyl recordings, all this kind of thing, magazines, photos. You've got just stuff everywhere. Can you kind of deal with it and get rid of it or whatever?" So I was like, okay, I'm going to spend a bit of time doing it, just categorizing it, digitizing it. And I thought, right, we'll just stick it. Initially, we were like, well, let's, to go back a step, because I've been on the radio for every weekend since 1998, basically, most Friday and Saturdays. And because I was doing a lot of the dance shows for your Galaxies and Capitals and everything else, we always had these guest mixes, and they were always recorded, and we had and everything. And then it was just put onto a tape, and it was chucked in a box. But we kept everything. We kept everything that anyone did for us. So it was like, okay, well, maybe we'll just stick some of these on YouTube or Mixcloud, and that'll be a nice thing to do. But realized that I had so much stuff, and then chatting to other DJs and other radio people and other people in the sort of club scene, they're like, oh, I've got these as well. I've got a big box of these flyers. So we're like, okay, well, why don't we just let's just try and create a little website out of it. And to cut a long story short, it spiraled very quickly, and we ended up spending a year creating this Dance Music Archive website. Wow. And the idea was that it was all categorized by year, so you kind of go to your era. So you might be like, okay, well, 97 was peak for me. So you'd click 97, and in there you'd have a Spotify playlist with all the tracks. You'd have a load of recordings from radio shows, from club nights. You'd have all the magazines that you can read from that year, all the flyers and pictures. So yeah, the idea was just to try and, because I think often electronic music, the UK club scene is undervalued in terms of how important it's been to youth culture and just to the culture in general in our country. So not just our country, across the whole of Europe and the US really as well. But it was we need to start really archiving this and categorizing this and putting some importance on how big this thing was and how much it means to people.
Absolutely.
So we wanted to do it, it's not like a museum is the wrong way, but it is an archive. It's it's ever changing. It was always let's just get this stuff down, because otherwise, as much as we think that everything's online now as well, and that's actually ironically more easy to get lost. A quick delete of something on YouTube, it's gone. Someone's hard drive fails, which they do all the time. These things are gone. So a lot of scanning of flyers and things like that as well. But yeah, I mean, we've got a lot. We could spend. I reckon we spend every single day for the next 5 or 6 years adding to it, and it wouldn't be full. So we just have to just kind of add bits where and when we can. But anyone's always free to get in touch with anything they have as well. It's we found a box of. We've got a load of God's Kitchen stuff actually, a load of things from one of their events. Yeah, we've
Might
had
be
stuff.
useful, yeah.
We've had stuff from lost tapes from Gate Crashes, NEC events that we've found and uploaded, all those sort of things. We've got a lot of bits. But if anyone has anything that they think is special, then yeah, do give us a shout. Get in touch.
Because I know how little there is from back in the day. You know, when you're actually trying to search for something,
Totally,
because there was less video and there was less cameras, and there was less. You would go back and try and find something. For example, say Cream '96.
Yeah, really difficult.
You'll struggle. You'll really, really struggle. But what I've found is because we've had the Ibiza worker group, and because we've had One More Time, and because we post a lot of retro nostalgic stuff, we get people sending us stuff all the time. And it's just like, some of it is utter rubbish, and it's just like, it's all over the place, and it's filmed on a potato, but some of it is quality, absolute quality. And so we have stuff, but it's still very difficult to find.
It is. And any of those bits that you get as well, please do forward on afterwards, because again, we're about, like, there's no allegiance, we got no politics, we got no, it's basically like, it's the whole scene, it's all the different clubbing brands, it's all the different music genres and styles and scenes and sounds, so it's just like encapsulating it all. So anything that people have got, it's like, okay, we'll make sure we just chuck it in the archive just for safekeeping, just to keep this stuff for
I'm going to put all the links
future.
in the descriptions and everything for your site. But yeah, it's really, really important. I mean, like, we've just done a post on God's Kitchen. It's got 500,000 views just on Eddie Halliwell scratching.
Yeah,
from,
which is just something we used to see every weekend, and now it's amazing to see, isn't it?
And it's really weird though, because you get people who don't get it, because Eddie, when he was doing the crabbing and the scratching the way he used to do every weekend all the time, which is normal. Now I'm looking at some of the comments, and they're like, "What's he doing? Why? What? I don't get it. Why on earth would he do that?" And it was just like, wow, you obviously weren't around in that era to understand how cool that sounded when it was there. And then I've got another video of him when he's really using the mixer, boom, 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 like how people used to mix. It's a lot more subtle nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, very
and
much so.
Not without the beat coming in. And you see Eddie, and that was another video that's got several 100,000 views. And it's just like, since this one's blown up, people have gone over to the other video and they're like, that just sounds like noise. And I'm just like, what are you on about,
But, protecting the culture is like a really important thing, and it might be the people who've never. And that to be fair, that was the idea when from the website came the radio show, the History show, and doing the dance music archive as a obviously it works as an audio program, it works as playing the actual music to people. And again, we treat that like a new music radio show, so it might be that, but it's for old music. We pick out 2 different years each week, and then we play a few big anthems and stuff that you'll know and that you'll love, but hopefully a lot of stuff that you've never heard before that you missed the first time around. That might be because you're not old enough, or it might be because you just, there is so much music, you are always going to miss stuff. And the nature of a lot of dance stuff, especially back then, was that it comes out, it's promoed, it goes through the cycle of clubs, it's big in the clubs, might get a couple of radio plays, and it's gone again, and you've forgotten about it. But you go back and you go, oh my God, that is an incredible piece of music. So it's about bringing a load of that stuff back out, and again, just celebrating the culture and the music. And it's not necessarily all about kind of like nostalgia or retro. It's more like this is just great music. It's sort of irrelevant when it was out, you know.
This is something that we're very, very keyed into with One More Time Ibiza. No matter what, if there's 10 people in a club or 2,000 people in a club, the music is guaranteed to be wicked.
Totally,
you know,
yeah.
all of the warm-up is going to be right. The main artist is going to be right. We've got Vicky and guests.
It was brilliant.
This year.
Yeah, always brilliant.
Brilliant. But we've always got it so it's programmed.
Yeah.
So whether there's one person in that club or 1,000, 2, 3, 4, whatever, it's going to be absolutely bang on.
Yeah.
So what, with so much music history to cover and archive, what is the biggest challenge in knowing what to put in the archive?
You know what it is? I think
you just know.
There's a bit of just been in it so long that you have a feel for, you know, what like strikes a chord with people, you know what, you know, I mean, if you've been DJing for a long time, over 20 years, you kind of know what works and what makes people like, you know, what gives people the right feelings. But aside from that, really, it's like the most important thing is trying to cover everything. So, you know, in a radio show, it's making sure that the most years you might have quite a lot of house, some trance, some drum and bass, some breaks, maybe a bit of chill. You know, he's trying to make sure you cover off everything. And actually, rather than a challenge, that's part of the beauty and the excitement of it, is not being tied to any kind of scene. It's just showcasing the whole of it. So if we do like 1996, you really would get you get some of those really early trance and dream house stuff. You get some massive big house things. You get a lot of early jungle, but you know, you get the whole range, and that's just that is amazing. It's freeing as well as a DJ and a presenter that you can play all that stuff in one.
Yeah, definitely. What's the most surprising, or what the rarest find that you have, or the most pleasurable find that you've actually got in the archive?
The rarest thing, which I think isn't in the archive, because I need to work out what to do with it, but I found in my attic was a 2-hour DAT tape that was of the late Frankie Knuckles, like a full like studio recorded set with loads of his tracks in there, probably like unreleased stuff and, you know, his own remixes and stuff. That it was obviously, whether it was once broadcast on Galaxy and then left, I don't know, but it was one of the ones that I just over the years squirreled away and put in a box somewhere. So, and I need to try and again to get in touch with Frankie Knuckles' estate and say, what do you want us to do to this?
Yeah.
You know, sadly he passed away a long time ago, and he needs to. I don't want to, because of the respect of that. You don't just want to kind of just whack that out on YouTube as a thing. I'd rather make sure that the people who are close to him want to, you know, they decide what to do with it. So I do need to chase that up actually. But that's probably the rarest thing we got that isn't actually in there at the minute.
I'm kind of I was a hoarder of all my memorabilia in Ibiza when I lived there. I've even got a piece of space.
Oh, really?
In the terrace when it got knocked down. I got a piece of the wall.
That's brilliant.
So I've got that, and like behind me, I've got that shipwrecked sign just behind me by the books. From the original first ever shipwreck boat party in 2005. My mate Adam made it. And that was the first ever morning party on a boat.
That's awesome.
I mean, and so I've got loads of stuff that's.
Tell you what, I just remember what we have got in the office, just around the corner. We've got a piece of the Hacienda dance floor on the wall as well.
There we go.
Which is nice.
Awesome. So just if you got any heroes, if you could sit down with any one artist from dance music history, who would that be?
I've got lots and lots and lots and lots of heroes, but I would say I'd say Paul Oakenfold is always going to be an interesting one, just because he never seems to sort of, I know that he kind of realizes, but he never plays up to it at all. But he's got this most incredible history. You know, he was literally like day one. He was one of the 4 people that kind of, you know, legendary story of the lads going off on a holiday to Ibiza and going to Amnesia and bringing this sound back to the UK and saying, oh guys, we've heard this amazing like Balearic music and kicking off, you know, essentially with him and Danny Rampling and everyone else, and it's Schumann, Spectrum and everything else between them, that they very much started this whole thing in this country, but then went through from remixing like there's got Manchester bands and creating that kind of sound, right up until when I was really getting into it in the sort of mid-late 90s. His things like Effecto Floro compilation was massive. So, you all through his like career, he's kept doing things that are really like quite special. Lots of obviously soundtracks and movie stuff as well. And I've spent a lot of time with Paul, and he's lovely, but I've never really dug into that too much. I don't know. It just feels like I think he'd be an amazing person to really just try and drill him down. But you need days with him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He must have the best archive of stuff. If he's kept things, I've no idea. Some people just don't realise how much they've kind of done for something, and they just move on with the rest of their lives,
Yeah, we've booked him twice.
Yeah.
For one more time, Ibiza. He loves playing for us. We had to drag him off the decks to get Vicky on the last time, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm coming back here." And his son was with him. He brought his son along, wow. And his son, I think it was one of his first clubbing experiences ever.
That's amazing.
And so Paul, and funny enough, you brought up the story with the 4 DJs who brought the music back. Because they went to Nightlife, a club called Nightlife.
Right.
And that's where I used to work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when I first went to Ibiza and I heard about all this, it was a complete chance that I walked into this club and I go, as a kid, we've got any bar jobs going? And then I just discovered that there's had this deep history of these DJs coming back. And you'll know them. Alex Ellinger, he was the resident there with Dermot. And and then we had Slipmat coming on the Wednesdays and Ray Davies and all of this lot. But then they were telling me about the previous history of Tony and Nexo and all of this. I was just like, I only come in here for a job, and I was banging to music, So
brilliant.
Yeah, it was absolutely. It was just. I think the universe definitely aligned for me then. The future. Where do you think the future? How do you see it evolving in the next few years of dance music? It's kind of in a not a weird area, but it's gone.
Yeah, it is. Like we talked about. It's very much. It's not fractured. Ironically, do you know what I mean? Like, whereas the thing that we used to complain about, that everything was kind of in these own disparate little bubbles and boxes, whereas it's not now. It's much more of a kind of a generic. Generic's the wrong word. I'm not like trying to be derogatory about it, but it's a very, very, very different. And everyone who you speak to who's been in this kind of scene and industry for a while, says the same. It's just very different. It's a different thing. It's constantly evolving. It's one of the reasons why. I mean, if you look at something like punk or another scene that when acid house started coming through in the late 80s, people likened it to like the punk scene. It was something that was very different. It was quite anti-establishment. It was a bit edgy. It had some political statements behind it, whatever else. But dance and electronic is the only thing that's lasted as long as anything else. It's the longest running music scene that has ever been in popular culture, and it remains as big now in terms of a global scene of the amount of people that are into it, the amount of money it generates, as it ever has. It's probably much bigger now. So it does just constantly evolve. I mean, I'm not the best person to ask about the kind of, because I'm not, I stepped away from the kind of future side of things. I have people, we have a team of people here at Distorted who are younger than me, who are on the pulse, and they're out every single weekend. Whereas I'm kind of like I'm like, let people who are a bit younger do that now, because what I can bring to the table is a knowledge of being able to kind of show you what else there is out there from the past, and looking back over like 35 years. Now, by no means am I ancient, but it's like I do feel like the youngest people are the people who should be in charge of what's new. It shouldn't be those of us who are in our 40s now. It should be another generation.
Absolutely.
You kind of got a handover.
My friend Andy said to me a couple of years ago, electronic music has bridged generations
totally
for the first time ever.
Yeah,
because it was segmented into 70s, 80s disco, pop, punk,
and now it's just dance.
Our children are listening to tracks that we listen to,
totally.
maybe remixed.
And when we do our, when we've done last year, we did our dance music events in Leeds, and it is incredible. There is genuinely people coming with like a couple of generations, and people bringing their like 19, 20-year-old kids with them who are in their late 40s, and they're just out together, and it's a normal thing. It's amazing to see. Like, I think it's genuinely like, it's like, oh, that's like, it's so special. And no kind of weirdness or awkwardness around that. It's just like people who are coming out with their kids to celebrate, to enjoy this amazing music. And like I say, it transcends like ages, so it's not weird. I always thought that was really special. When I first started going to Ibiza, it was like, there's people in the club who were like in their 60s, and that was normal. It was like, it's a European, it's particularly a Spanish thing as well, that older people will go out to those sort of places. But to see, you go to Privilege or Amnesia, and if you're lucky enough to go to like the VIP areas, you saw people who were much, much older than you, and you're like, oh, okay. And that's, that sort of happens at certain places here now as well, which is really cool.
We've have a lot of that at Kevin and Perry. We have a lot of the parents bringing their kids and showing them the film. And I would say I spotted a good couple of people in their 70s last year, easily. They left a bit early. They left a bit early, because I generally spend the night either outside or in a green room, hiding away from everyone. You know what it's like. You've been a promoter before? Obviously, you are a promoter.
So
you understand the stress behind it,
Yeah, very much so.
And to be honest, with the bigger events that we do, like God's Kitchen and Amnesia and Eden, some of the bigger Eden events, I don't actually get to see the event. And my serotonin boost is reading the comments afterwards that they've loved it, and then I get all of that. But when I was out in the smoking area in Amnesia, I was seeing a lot of the, just checking out the demographic, and there was it was just, there's from 18 through to 70, and I
think it's fantastic. I mean, that is absolutely brilliant. Because, if you're older, you don't want to be going out with just all a load of kids, and if you're a kid, you don't want to be going out with a load of old people. You just want a nice mixture of everyone, and feel like, however old you are, there's there is this real mix, and you fit in. And that's what, that was the original kind of vibe of dance music, wasn't it? The whole culture was built around like just people from different backgrounds getting together.
Anyone involved. I mean, we have been surprised as well by the demographic at One More Time. Ibiza, we're getting a lot of the young in there now. They're loving the tunes, because people like Ben Hemsley and artists like that are dropping the big trance tunes. You're getting the techno DJs remixing them, so they're not really sure that they don't realize that their old tracks being remixed. But we're finding that trance melodic techno thing is really kind of helping, because they're understanding the riffs and the breakdowns.
Totally. It's a huge scene at the minute, which I think is great. You will get some older DJs who are maybe slightly bitter about how the scene, who might be like, oh, they're just kind of recycling what we did, but it's like, no, it's great. We should all be very pleased and thankful that these things are, you're introducing a whole new generation to stuff.
I mean, there are some DJs that won't play the old stuff. There's some DJs at all. And we're often asked, can we have that so and so X, Y, and Z on a booking? And we're like, we can't. We would love to, but they're moving forward. They're producing.
I do get that.
And they're electronic music specialists. They're not just in one genre, but they're remembered for maybe trance or maybe house. But they're in the DJ's mind and producer's mind, they're electronic musicians.
So and I totally, and people do all want different things. You've got to respect that. And I think it is nice occasionally that, for any of these people, it's good to be able to celebrate what you've done and what you've kind of achieved, So, I would recommend to them that any of these guys give it a go. It is really special.
So I've been looking at This Is Distorted, which is something I wasn't very familiar about. I knew about your musical history. What's that all about then? Tell me what it is.
Well, so very briefly, Distorted is our company that myself and Nick Riley set up. We'd been very, very lucky and had an amazing career on the radio and producing tracks and remixing, and we got to travel the world and really live through that. We were never the biggest DJs in the world. We were never like I think the highest we ever got in the top 100 was like not even, it was like 102 or something when the
Good
month
effort,
after
good
they
effort.
do the ones after. But what we were residents a lot, and we were regulars at, well, certainly residents at Gatecrasher, and regulars at Cream and God's Kitchen and Slinky and Passion and Ministry, and so we were, and all the festivals as well. So we got to, we were Tiesto's warm up for a couple of years as well. We got to live out and do all that stuff. We were, like I say, we were never at the very top of the tree, but we were there right in the thick of it. And it's we were like massively lucky to do that. And we'd sort of decided that we achieved a lot of the things we wanted to do. We took the radio to a national audience, to rival Radio 1, and we were, we kind of equaled and bettered the figures on there, so that was incredible. We were like, okay, well, we've got babies and we've got, little children, and what's like next? Which I think is what a lot of people in the industry, certainly ex-DJs, probably didn't do before us. They were kind of just like, oh, well, this will last forever and this will be fine. And it won't. Everyone changes and grows and gets a little bit older, and your priorities maybe change a little bit. And what you can't be jumping on a plane heading to Ibiza and Mallorca and everywhere else in the world like every single weekend when there's babies at home. It's just not. That's not how you are to. You can't be a dad like that and stuff. So we were like, okay, well, we have been lucky. We've achieved a lot of stuff. What are we going to do next? And our skills were in radio. We knew how to make radio and make good radio. And we had a lot of good contacts within dance and electronic music. We knew a lot of the big names as well. And, touch wood, I'd like to think we also had a lot of kind of goodwill capital as well, because we were trustworthy. We were always very nice to people. We were always just good people. That was the idea. It was
weren't a rogue.
Don't be a dickhead. It was the rule we always lived by.
Yeah.
See, that is sort of how it started. It was like, I bet that it was when things like, SoundCloud and Mixcloud and the people starting to do stuff on their own for YouTube. It was the very start of when people started to do their own shows and start to build their own kind of media empires, as it were. They're like mini empires. And we were like, okay, we could help people do this, because a lot of people don't know how to make good programs. They're not producers. So that's sort of where it started from. And 10, 11 years down the line, that's really grown. And we have an entire speech half of when we were doing well enough, we hired in our ex-boss from Capital, who took over to the speech side of things. So we do a lot of like corporate podcasts and some TV bits and all that sort of thing. And then myself and Nick tend to handle the music side of things. So we've got a great, nice big team here in Leeds of people who are experts, lots of music producers, and we work with about 65, 70 kind of big artists and labels. That's everyone from Deadmau5 and Defected to Don Diablo, Alok, Claptone, Monster Cat, He, She, They. It's a real broad range of stuff, from like really super underground brands to massive legendary artists, people like Sister Bliss and Roger Sanchez and Chicane, all these guys. So we make all their programs basically, and we do a lot of their kind of
for their radio shows.
Their radio shows and podcasts and whatever you want to call them. They're weekly programs that they make.
Yeah,
and then
we
I understand syndicate those to hundreds of stations around the world.
I get that, because Jules and everybody I've worked with has always had one of these. Eddie and from way back.
We still look after Eddie's show, and so a lot of these guys we kind of do, and then we launch a lot of new programs for people, because it's a big, it's a huge global thing now. It's that you do not. It's an amazing place now where you don't need to rely on those broadcasters. So going back to like not even that long ago, but if you had a show on Radio 1 or Capital or Kiss or whatever else, these guys kind of owned you almost, you know what I mean? It was kind of, you were still very much under their control about what you played and what you did, and it was on once a week and you weren't allowed on any other stations and that kind of thing. Whereas now it's like the artist is in control, or the brands. We will do this show, it'll be like the pillar of what we do every single week. It's where we'll play all of our new tracks, all of our new releases, we'll talk about all of our gigs, we'll launch everything that we do, and then that can go on, it can go on podcast, it can go on 100 radio stations, it can be on Mixcloud, we'll do a YouTube version with video. It's like this big, it's like their main point of contact with the outside world now. For a lot of these guys, it's their thing that they use. And, when you're in the headphones of your fans for, half an hour every single week, when they're in the car or they're in the gym or they're on the train or the bus, it's a very different connection rather than just, I think a lot of people have found that social media is just so fleeting. It's great that you see a post that disappears in like 3 seconds and you might press a like on it, but you're not connecting with your fans at all in any kind of meaningful way. Whereas if you're talking to them directly, it creates these kind of amazing communities of people. So yeah, it's worked really well. We were lucky to be at the right time, right place, and like I say, Distorted is our that's our kind of 9 to 5, our business.
I totally identify with that. That is the exact reason why I'm doing this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a community. I understand that the attention span on social media. I manage a lot of people's social media.
Yeah.
We have a team behind us who do a lot of Google ads, a lot of film video editing, because we were always finding that we're getting finding bottlenecks and
of course it's the most important thing. Like, social media is incredible, but it's like everyone's looking for, like, how else do you make those connections? How you make the deeper connections, So like you say, doing this is a perfect example.
Absolutely.
You bring people in through the socials and then make them stay for what's there.
Yeah. I mean, this is why we're involved with so many of these podcasts from editing viewpoint. I was like, well, why aren't we doing our own?
Totally.
Because everyone's always asking about us and I love Talkboard, I love Slipmat, and I was like, well, let's just get them on a podcast.
Totally.
And talk about One More Time, because we're just going to do that throughout the summer. So it's it just made absolute sense.
It's great.
I mean, with podcasts, they've exploded in the last few years. I mean, how do you see dance music radio and podcasting evolving together?
I mean, I think the way that we describe them as well, like it's a bit of a. There's still a bit of a weird thing where some people call stuff podcasts and then they think that's different to like a show, and is that the same as like what we tend to do is it's just like it's a program, and the podcasting is just the means of it. And like I said, going back to the fact that it's now everyone can you're bypassing the big media networks now. You don't need them. You don't need a BBC or anyone to do your thing now. That is just an incredibly exciting concept, that you make this show, and it might be delivered via the podcast format. I mean, it might also be delivered on YouTube and on all the different streaming platforms. It might be on lots of different radio stations, but it's the podcast is just one form. It's just there's podcast apps and you can get it on that, but you can get it everywhere else as well, or you can choose to go down one route. It's a really, really exciting time. It means that people can really create. People are now the publisher. They are now the station. They are the TV station, the radio station. They're everything, and that is it's amazing. What an opportunity.
We're in I keep on telling people that we're in a very, very fortunate position to be in this era, this time, because now we've got AI.
Yeah.
Now that's going to change so much over the next few years. Like my company, we're heavily invested in the future of AI. I mean, of where things are going. We study it. We look at what's happening. We're pretty geeky about it, to be honest. But I don't want to be left behind.
No, certainly.
Because I think it is creatively, it's not going to replace jobs. It's going to replace tasks within music. Like even this podcast, we'll run it through AI. So yeah, it's a really exciting time in the creative world.
I think it's the whole AI thing is very frightening for a lot of people. I think it scares people, but there's no need to be if you kind of, like you say, if you manage to harness
embrace
it and you know what you're kind of doing with it. It could be a huge opportunity. It's kind of yet to be seen. I don't know.
I heard an expression the other day: "Fire has been reinvented." And it's just like I listen to a lot of podcasts about AI and business, and and some of the capabilities that are already available, but not really out there in the common knowledge domain. Like some of these big businesses are inserting AI already. It's expensive to do it. But some of the stuff they got doing, they're turning like a 10-person company and then 10xing it straight away just by putting Facebook agents in. AI agents, And it's just like, wow, this is going to become the future, you know? So I'm really excited by it, but I know it is quite fearful of a
Yeah, I
lot,
think
for a
it's
lot of
fearful
people.
for some of the creative industries that I guess people that kind of worry that, and it is a legitimate worry. You know, if you just come out of university with a degree in graphic design and you realise that what you've just spent 4 years and all your money, you know, studying, you can kind of get a AI to create something in 15 seconds and it was free. You know, that's a fairly frightening thing. And the same with
Yeah.
maybe if you produce, you know, a music for TV and film, and it's incidental music, and it's kind of stuff that will go in the background. Again, AI can do that for you in 10 seconds flat. I mean, we do work with a lot of AI stuff and are building it. We actually did, I think, what was the world's first fully AI podcast nearly 2 years ago. And again, that was from the just from the kind of the fact that it was getting a lot of hype and people were starting to talk about it. And we launched this thing called Synthetic Stories, where we got ChatGPT to write a story. We had a different AI tool that would be the voice of it, and another AI that did the music, and then so we kind of put it all together. And actually, that it was just a little experiment for us, but we ended up getting written about in things like the Financial Times and all sorts of things as being this. It was only ever just a little PR stunt.
Yes.
But it was an interesting kind of thing, and kind of like not sobering for our whole team there, but it is like this is going to change things, you know.
Yeah, definitely,
without a doubt.
If you could launch a dream project under This Is Distorted, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. The thing is, right, I'm very lucky that Dance Music Archive is my dream project in here, so it's my like perk as one of the founders that I get to. And I didn't for long, you know, we had to work very, 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 very hard for 10 plus years, but it's fortunately come to a point where I go, okay, well, I'm going to spend a lot of my time now I've turned one of the back rooms in the office into, it's like full of vinyl. It's got all that kind of stuff in there. But and being able to do our events and stuff like that. And we've got a compilation coming this summer as well with Universal, which is going to be really exciting, like a vinyl compilation. So it's the dream project for me is what I'm fortunate enough to spend probably half my week kind of on, which is the Dance Music Archive, and that's being able to do the show and think about the event. So yeah, I'm very lucky with that.
So you're already there.
Yeah,
there.
There's lots of other, you know, there is lots of other artists that we'd like to work with and get on board who we sort of talking to. But for me, like totally personally, not with my company hat on. For me personally, like I do get to work on my dream project.
You've worn a lot of hats, haven't you?
Yeah. I do.
When I was doing my research on you, I was like, worn lots of hats. Honestly, I actually wrote that down yesterday. Yeah, because obviously I knew all about the music side, but I always like to do a bit of a deep dive as well. And that's when I discovered the This Is Distorted side of it. And I was like, wow, that's kind of similar to something that we're doing as well. Well, not similar, but could work. And,
and it's amazing that I get to work now with a lot of the people who you kind of have looked up to and enjoy the music of and have been really passionate of for many, many years, and have, you know, managed to. So there's a lot of our younger team who work with, you know, the current sort of biggest artists, people like Mal P and stuff like that, who we've started working with recently, and all these guys who that's their generations, you know, that they're really kind of excited about. I still get a buzz when my WhatsApp goes and it's Chicane or Sister Bliss or Roger Sanchez. You're like, you know, because for me, that's like, they were the people that you read about in the magazines, but now that we work with and that we talk to every day. So it's a nice, like, full circle thing.
Absolutely. I used to go there all the time in Ibiza. Like, I used to go raving to Well Dance and Dreamscape and see Slipmat and and Vibes and all that lot. You know, they're my mates. It's just like, what's going on there? You know, especially Matt. And I used to live with Charlie B as MC, above the ship in Ibiza, of all places. And the stuff we used to get up to, Matt used to be up there all the time. And yeah, now we're...
These are lovely guys. He came and played for us, actually, in October this year.
He's a top man. He's a dear friend. I love Matt to pieces. And we've got him booked several times this year. We always seem to book him several times a year.
But he smashes it, absolutely smashes it, doesn't he? He's brilliant.
He's been really, really clever with since he was one of the godfathers, as we called it. But he, even back when Strawberry Sundays was at Cloud9 in London, he played, and he was playing house. Now that we're talking the 90s there, late 90s. He just wasn't playing, so he was evolving his sound then.
Yeah.
So he was well ahead of it. He was the first person that I ever saw use CDs, bring CDs along. He was the first person I ever saw using a controller.
Yeah.
So he's always been right out there. And
so I mean, like you mentioned at the start, like happy hardcore, like I was like mad into that when I was like 13, 14 years old. Absolutely loved the happy hardcore, and a lot of the like. I knew Slipmatt then as a happy hardcore artist, and it wasn't until you kind of look back at stuff like SL2, and I didn't even realize when I was a kid that he'd been doing stuff that I'd loved way before that. You know, it's another one of these people, like a Jules, like an Oakenfold, like these guys who've got this real like rich history of things that's perhaps not appreciated sometimes.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So, regarding Ibiza, we're over there this year. I mean, I can't believe it's just a few months off. What's your favorite venue in Ibiza?
That's a bit of a choose your favorite children, and I've got 3 children, so I'll choose 3.
Yes.
So the first club I ever played at in Ibiza was Eden, and I was like a teenager. I managed to blag Paul Taylor to let me play a retro night there, and I did like an hour set there. That was the first thing I ever did. But then I mentioned earlier on, we spent a couple of years as Tiesto's one for Privilege when he did his big
oh right, okay,
his big Privilege gigs. They were like
when
huge.
Nick was running it. Nick was running it, wasn't he? Yeah.
So is that like
That's
2009? Right. Is that 2009? I think around that time.
Yes.
So we did we sort of hosted the back room in there and did all the bookings for that, but we also did the first set every night as well on that amazing stage that used to be in the middle of the swimming pool.
Yeah.
So a couple of years of doing that was about as good as it's going to get if you're a DJ. Do you know what I mean? If you're playing, he was probably the biggest artist in the world at the time, the biggest club in the world, like at capacity every week with 10,000 people in there. So again, spectacular for that, and then also very lucky to spend lots of time playing Cream Amnesia, and that for most DJs, especially people who grew up with things like Kevin and Perry, that's the one. That was the one to play. It was always such an amazing atmosphere with that Megatron ice cannon. But we were very lucky. I've got to play. We've done outside broadcasts from Pasha. We played the Terrace at Space. But the three would always be Privilege, Amnesia, and Eden. They were the 3.
I've got a funny story about the swimming pool Privilege. I used to work for Mani Mission, and doing the security, and we're looking after the entertainers and stuff like that. And there used to be the Mani Mission security, and there used to be the Privilege security. And if you jumped in the pool as a punter, you would be thrown out of the club by the Privilege security. Yeah. The Mani Mission security used to pull them out and try and hide them in the clubs. So it was like a cat and mouse between the Privilege security and the Mani Mission security. Fuck, there's someone in the pool. We're dragging them out and we're running them through the crowd and trying to hide them. The Privilege security or whatever everywhere. But I
do love that. That was an amazing place. I'd like to see, because it's all been
it's going to be incredible.
Redone at the minute. It's going to be. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But I will be there'll be a bit of sadness in there as well, thinking of all the things. Because again, as a massive nerd and someone who immersed themselves in it from being a kid, like when you were playing in that booth, and it still had the Q logo at the bottom of the pool.
Yes.
So when you're playing there and you're playing music in there, and obviously it had a roof and everything, but looking down and thinking, this has been here, this booth's been here, this funny little bridge for like so many years. Like Freddie Mercury was here. Do you know what I mean? It was on this ground. All these people, all this like massive history of stuff, and it feels like really special to be. It was really special to be sort of playing there and thinking about the history that's gone behind it and how it all evolves.
I believe they concreted over the pool in the last few years of Privilege.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't see it myself, but I do remember one of the last years at Mani Mission, the extendable dance floor.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and it used to extend over and everyone used to be at the barrier.
When it got busy,
it started moving. And then off it went. Yeah. And then we were always told not to throw anything in the pool. And the Burning M?
Yeah.
of Manumission.
Yes.
At the closing party, Alex, we were holding it. We just plugged it in.
I tell you what,
What is still there?
you say about people jumping. I could not think of somewhere I'd rather not fall in than that pool, because I cannot imagine there's been any cleaning of it, any chemicals.
Yeah, but they couldn't get out.
Decades.
That was the problem. They couldn't
no
get out.
way
It
out
was
either.
steep. Oh, I mean, we literally dragging people's girls out. Oh God, I've just had a flashback. I remember one time pulling a girl out, and I pulled her trousers, and I literally her ass just hung out, and half of the club seen it and cheered, you know, and it was just that has literally just come back to me. Oh my God, yes, I remember that clearly now. But
it always felt like a bit of a health and safety hazard, having a swimming pool in the middle of a nightclub.
There's a lot more rules nowadays.
Yeah,
but
you won't get away with it.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this pod up, and
Yes.
I always ask our guests this: if the world was to end tomorrow, what would your one more tune be?
That's even worse than like picking your favorite
I know.
club.
I
tell you what,
love
if you ask me
Arcadia.
this question, like if you ask me this every single day of the year, I'll give you 365 different answers. Like I guarantee it 100%. But today I will choose, just because it's a very kind of, it's almost quite a cheesy record, but it's got amazing memories for me. It's called Arms of Lorraine by Evoke, and that is the one that I would do as my end of the world one more tune if it was tonight, because that's the mood
I'm
in.
going to whack it in the link below.
Do it. Steinway remix. I'll send you it so we get the right one.
Absolutely. Andy, it's been fascinating, and I will see you
Thank you so much.
3rd of July at One More Time Ibiza.
Oh, wait. Thanks very much, Dexter. Cheers for that.